Hey guys, welcome to the first of hopefully many videos in this How to Play series from the Sweet Lair, in which we'll be going over the ins and outs of how to play a variety of the games we feature at the Sweet Lair during leagues or other events. Though today you'll only be seeing my hands. I'm Tyler, and today I'll be covering Karekare, a tile placement area control type game. In Karekare, you'll take on the role of settlers from different Polynesian tribes, landing on the beaches of Karekare for the first time. Your goal is to win, and you win by accumulating the most honor over the course of 3 eras. You'll gain honor by collecting resources to build huts and canoes, which will be scored at the end of each of the 3 eras. So, how might an inspiring tribal chieftain claim victory on the land of Karekare? Let's find out. To start us out, here are the pieces you can expect to see during gameplay. Your player pieces include 6 huts, 6 canoes, and 4 field markers, as well as a honor tracker, which can be flipped over to track points past 100, and your player summary card, which outlines the rules that you can, the actions you can take during your turn. There are also the sweet potato and timber resources, which these represent 1, but there are also tokens representing 5. There are the land tiles, of which there are 4 different varieties. You have forest, water, field, and hill tiles. There is the honor scoreboard, which perhaps ranks up there with some of the worst scoreboard designs in board gaming history. And there is the first player token, which will be passed from era to era. At the start of the game, each player will select their color. They'll receive 1 sweet potato and 3 timber as their starting resources, and then the first player will be determined, and after that you will draft your starting hand of land tiles. Your hand will only ever be comprised of 2 tiles, starting with the first player and going clockwise. Each player will draft a tile from the starting lineup of tiles, scaled to the number of players. It's 2 tiles per player, so in a 4-player game there are 8 tiles. Then in reverse turn order, starting with the last player, each player will draft their second tile from the remaining tiles. We must also form the starting land, where the exploration will begin by randomly drawing 3 tiles and placing them adjacent to each other in the center of the play area. Finally, the 3 face-down era stacks must be created from the remaining tiles, scaled to the number of players. In a 4-player game, there will be 16 tiles in each stack. The first era and each subsequent era will begin by flipping the first 2 tiles from the current era stack and placing them face up on the table to create the market, like so. That concludes setup, and then play can begin. Starting with the first player, each player will perform the following 3 steps until both the current era stack and market are depleted. Step 1. Explore the island. You will do this by placing one of the 2 tiles in your hand adjacent to the explored land in the center. This can touch multiple tiles or a single tile, but it must be adjacent to a tile. Step 2, activate actions based on the tile you played. For each tile adjacent to the tile you just placed, you can activate a single action, meaning if you play a tile adjacent to multiple tiles, like so, you can potentially activate multiple actions. On each player card is a matrix showing what action is triggered based on the tile you placed and what other tiles it was placed next to. We'll go more in depth on these later in this video. If you cannot or do not want to perform an action for any reason, you are not required to do so. Finally, step 3, you're going to draw a tile from either the market or face down from the top of the current era stack. If drawn from the market, flip over the top tile from the current era stack to replenish the market so that there is always 2 tiles there. Continue to do this in clockwise order until the current era stack and market run out of tiles, at which point the era ends. If this is the 3rd era, then every player gets 1 final turn, so at the end of the game, only 1 tile will remain in your hand. This means in the first 2 eras, every player will get 4 turns, and then in the final era, there'll be 5 turns for a total of 13 turns that each player will take. At this point, The current era is scored and honor awarded accordingly. On the honor scoreboard, there is a reminder of what is scored for each era in the bottom right corner here. So in eras 1, 2, and 3, you will score 4 points for every canoe you have out and 3 points for every hut that you have out. Additionally, in era 3, you'll score 1 point for every 4 timber or 2 sweet potatoes, as well as 4 points if you manage to place 4 of your huts, and 4 points if you placed out 3 of your field markers. If this was not the final era, then reset up for the next era by grabbing the next era stack and then refilling the market with 2 new tiles. The first player token should then be given to the player with the most honor, and in the case of a tie, the tied player who went last. After scoring era 3, the game ends and the winner is the player who obtained the most honor. Now, before wrapping this up, I did mention we'd be revisiting the actions. Karekare relies heavily on iconography to relay its concepts to the players. So as we start going over these actions, they should make more and more sense. So starting from the upper left, if you play a forest tile next to another forest tile, you'll gain 2 timber. Next to a field, you gain 1 timber. Next to a water tile, you can spend 1 timber to replace an opponent's canoe that is out on the explored tiles with your own canoe. It has to be adjacent to the water tile that you played next to, though. Or it has to be on the water tile you played next to. My bad. And then finally, and you'll notice this is the same for forest, field, and water, played adjacent to a hills tile, you get to score a hut on that hill if there is one. It's 2 points for an opponent's hut or 3 points for your own hut. One thing to note about both canoes and huts is you can only ever have 1 on a tile. Moving down to the field, if you play a field next to a forest, you gain 2 sweet potatoes. If you play a field next to a field, you gain, for 1 sweet potato, you can play your field marker onto that field and place 2 to 4 sweet potatoes, depending on the number of players. So in a 4-player game, you'd be placing 4 sweet potatoes out on that field and gain 2 points immediately. Field placed next to water, for 1 sweet potato, you can immediately remove your canoe from that water tile if it's there and score 5 points. This is helpful for scoring additional points at the end of the game. And then once again, next to a hill, you score points based on the type on whose hut is there. For water tiles, you get to place a canoe on the water tile you played if it's played next to a forest. If played next to a field, you can remove the sweet potato tokens on that field depending on whose field marker is there, if any. And then water next to water, for 1 timber, you can place a canoe on either of the water tiles if it is open. And then finally scoring points for adjacent huts for the hill. And then finally, if you played a hill next to a forest for 4 timber, you can place one of your huts. You can place your hut on that hill that you played. If played next to a field for 2 sweet potatoes, you can place your hut onto that hill that you just played. Next to water, you can remove one of your canoes from your personal supply, not what's already been placed out, and you can discard this back to the game box, and then you can put your hut out. This does mean that you lose access to one of your canoes for the rest of the game. Likewise, for a hill next to a hill, you can discard one of your huts from your personal supply to the box and place another hut out. Once again, that means you will have access to 1 less hut throughout this game. The huts and field markers you place out are permanent. However, the canoes, you may have noticed, can be swapped with this action right here. So something to keep in mind. And that's Karekare. Bree and I, we've played this a few times now, and while I wouldn't call it one of our favorite tile placement games, it's a game that's relatively easy to teach and fast to play. It's one that shouldn't overstay its welcome, and as such, I do find Karekare enjoyable to play despite its flaws and unpolished edges. I also appreciate the twist on the standard tile laying mechanic presented here, where it's not just the tile you place determine what actions you can take, but the tiles you're placing it adjacent to. But that's enough out of me. Please leave your thoughts and comments below, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.